Alrighty, yeah, it's gonna be that time again, everybody. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Hey everybody, Steve here, the retired hobby tech guy in Korea, and today we're coming to you and talking about Johnny Somali update. Yeah, the nuisance streamer that got in trouble in Japan and Israel and a number of other places, and his whole shtick is he live streams himself, kind of like what we're doing here, except he walks around and does it. And then people will make suggestions for him to break the laws of the land or harass other people, and they give him money for it. So the more crazy and outlandish stuff that this guy does, the more clicks and views and the more money he makes. So in other words, people are paying him and he makes the conscious decision to break the laws and harass people, and that's where we are here in Korea. So we're going to go over a little bit of background, his crimes in Korea. There's another upcoming trial for Johnny Somali, which is, this just goes on, and you'll be amazed at, if you thought the wheels of justice turn slowly in the United States, they turn even slower here in Korea. But there's a good reason. And it's just, and then there's more charges that are going to be filed against him. So we're going to take a look at this. And for those people that don't know, I'm Steve, the retired hobby tech guy. My wife and I, we sold everything in the United States. We put stuff in a couple of suitcases and we came and we're retired here in Korea. Got a little bit of the bedhead going on and enjoying a little bit of, I have a, what do I have this morning? I have a dark roast latte with some salted caramel and some whole milk. So it is killer. So good. I do my own. So, and with that being said, please like and subscribe to this video, the channel, to keep up to date with Johnny Somali. I do that every once in a while. Being an expat here in Korea, some hobby stuff, 3D printing, but let's just jump into that. So yeah, be sure to like and subscribe. So anyway, we're going to go over some of the information about Johnny Somali. The man is an idiot. I think he's like 24 or 26 years old, and his job is being a nuisance streamer. And like I said, he's been to Israel, he's been to Japan. He actually did crimes in Japan, paid fines, and he got banned from Japan for 5 years. Japan was really light on punishing him and holding him accountable for his actions. And that's kind of the thing, is that Johnny, whose name is Ramzi Khalid Ismail, and RKI is what he's known as sometimes, he's not actually Somali. He's an American. His descendants, his family is from Ethiopia, or at least one of them is, and unfortunately, yeah, I just feel sorry for his parents of bringing such shame and dishonor upon them by what he's doing. It is absolutely insane. So anyway, let's just jump right into it, and we'll go over a little bit of information. He first came to light when he should be sent to a mental hospital. Girl statue kiss YouTuber, another accident. This is from the chosun.com, which is a Korean news source. And what ends up happening is, this is him right here. This is Johnny Somali. And what he ended up doing is going to these comfort statue. And with that, he kissed it. He poured baby oil all over himself. He twerked against the statue. He did some other unmentionable things, such as going up the skirt of the statues, taking pictures, kind of, as a sexual act of, taking pictures of the statue's private parts. And he knew that what these statues were about. He went on live stream and talked about how these comfort women, which for those of you who don't know, comfort women were Korean women that were forced into prostitution during the Japanese occupation of Korea. So it's on the same level as the Holocaust. It was some really horrific things that happened back then. And so these statues are a monument, and they're very hallowed. I mean, it's for him to do something like this is absolutely insane. And he didn't just do it once. He did it twice. because there's a couple of different comfort statues that memorialize and show, what happened during the Japanese occupation. And oh, by the way, Ramsey ends up saying that, he loves Japan and that Japan should have destroyed Korea. Korea's never won a war, and it's just really, really, really bad. So it ends up, it all started with this here, with this comfort statue. And then this was actually back in October of last year. So remember how I said that the wheels of justice turn slowly in Korea? They do, and there's a reason for it. And you might think, oh, this is terrible. They're letting him off the hook. He's out. He's on his own recognizance in Korea. He just can't leave Korea until all of these court cases and charges and things are, put to rest. But actually, it ends up then what he ended up doing in Mapo, Seoul at night. He entered a convenience store and filmed women in a cosmetic store. And here's the one where he was in a convenience store in Hongdae in Mapo-gu, Seoul, and he was drunk. He live streamed the whole thing. So this is like one of the stupidest people that I've ever seen. Is he films himself breaking the law, and everybody has access to it. Everybody copies it. Everybody downloads it. The Korean government, the police and the prosecutors, they all have copies of these videos and what he did because he records it. He was drunk. You can see a bottle of soju there, Sengro's. There you see the little bottles, Sangro soju, and he got lit. He was cursing at the staff in the store. It was an obstruction of business. He spilled the noodles. He was throwing noodles at people and things like that. He was dancing and yelling. He's got a Bluetooth speaker, and he was just being a severe nuisance. And unfortunately, harassing the old woman that was working at the store was just terrible. And, he thinks that he'll just get off with a fine. So he plays loud music on a portable speaker. The comfort statue thing and kissing and the disrespect that he had for that, which surprisingly is not a crime to do, but, it's like going to the Holocaust Memorial and twerking. It's just not something you do. That just shows how morally decrepit and depraved this guy is. He also played loud music on the subway and kicked out of the bus for playing North Korean music. So he's gone through and played, the North Korean national anthem. He's, yay, he says he's pro-North Korea, pro-China, hates Korea. On other live streams, he has actually said where all Asians should be killed. And all of this is just to make money. He has no morals whatsoever. He's played sexual material on his Bluetooth speaker in the presence of children, and we'll get into some of the other things he did. It ends up, it's just kind of a horrible thing that he's ended up doing. But the twerking and all that stuff was the initial thing that just a lot of Koreans and people like myself, expats who live in Korea, were just horrified and just dumbfounded at how somebody is allowed to do stuff like this. We were all in hopes that Korea, what they would end up doing is punishing him to the full extent of the law. And people in the United States, you get charged with a law or charged with a crime or crimes, and then usually you go before the judge. There's a plea, there's a bond hearing. So in other words, if the crimes are bad enough, you'll go to jail unless you could pay a bond to be let out. Here in Korea, they don't do bonds. Unless it's a really serious crime. They're just like, hey, these are the charges. How do you plead? And it goes before a judge. Kind of interesting. There's a long process for the entire investigation from the initial claim or charge that somebody submits all the way until the trial. There's a lot of different steps, and it takes a lot of time. So Johnny Somali is left on his own recognizance to be out in Korea, but he can't leave Korea. So him being the idiot that he is, goes out and live streams himself doing more crimes, and he catches more charges. And it's not like, okay, well, these are the charges. You go to court for all the different crimes, and we're going to charge you, and here's your sentence. fine, jail, prison, whatever it is, and you're done. In Korea, it is very different. It is absolutely insane on how it works, but there's a method to the madness, and we're going to go over this. Let's go and check out another article here. We'll take a look. Johnny Somali's legal troubles in Korea deemed self-inflicted amid the backlash. That's our Johnny there. He's quite the idiot. And again, he praises Japan and the occupation of Korea and just really harasses Korean citizens and so on and so forth. So if you got any comments, let's say, boom. Mono Marino says, let's hope he gets a lengthy sentence, and I appreciate the podcast. You're welcome. Thank you very much. I appreciate you watching and leaving a comment. Anyway, it ends up, here it is, going through. He's having some legal troubles. Obviously, during this time, he's not allowed to work, which is kind of a strange thing because he's not allowed to work, but he makes money streaming. But then again, work in Korea is working for a Korean employer. So him streaming and doing the things that he does as source of income from the United States doesn't seem to be a problem. But again, like I said, he's out on his own recognizance. He can't leave Korea. He can't work for a Korean employer. So he's sponging off a guy named Hank Yu, Hank Yu is one of those crazy people. He's another idiot, which is absolutely crazy. Let me see, where am I at now? He's absolutely crazy. Hank Yu is a Korean citizen. He went to the United States. He lied about, he claimed he was an American citizen. He bought guns, lied on the federal forms to purchase firearms. He caught a felony, did some prison time, and then he basically got kicked out of America. He claims he's Texas, he claims he's an American, but he's actually a Korean citizen who has not served his mandatory military service to Korea. So there's a conscription thing here in Korea. All males here in Korea have to do mandatory military service of 18 months, maybe 24 months, depending. But he has gotten away from that by claiming he's a student. And so he went to the United States, he went to college. Wasn't really serious about it. He just did it to get out of his military service. So now he's back in Korea and he hooked up with Johnny Somali. These two are like two peas in a pod. They're idiots of the nth degree. And Hank is living in Seoul and Ramsey's living with Hank. And there's some, I don't know what type of relationship they have, but it seems really weird. But Hank has supposedly a well-known family here in Korea, and I think his grandfather was a great prosecutor here in Korea. So, and his mother was like an artist or something, and so they're kind of well-to-do. So that's how he gets his money to pay, because Hank doesn't work. He is a despicable human being. He hates Korea. He says the Korean language is stupid. He loves China. Eventually he wants to go live in China. I mean, he loves North Korea supposedly, but yet, it's just, and again, he claims he's an American, but he's not. He's actually a Korean citizen. He was on a visa to Korea to be a student, but all of that's over and he's not going to college now. So a lot of people are asking, why isn't he doing his military service? And he is skirting his military service. Then it pops up to where it's like, well, can he be charged for that? Well, here in Korea, if you try not to do your military service through illegal means, you can be punished for that. So the more light that is on Johnny Somali, the more light comes on Hank Yu, and it could be bad for him. And I think it's just a matter of time before either Hank wakes up and says, hey, Johnny Somali is not good for me, but he's not. He's going to get some type of clout. He thinks that Johnny's a good guy and he's going to make some money off of this deal, but Johnny just uses people. That's what it comes to. He uses people to make money. He doesn't care about anybody else. He only cares about Hank because Hank is giving him a place to live. And so he will promise the world to Hank and maybe do weird things with Hank. But without Hank, Johnny Somali would be homeless. So it's just very, very problematic. So anyway, it's absolutely crazy. And Korea's put a travel ban on Johnny Somali. He can't leave Korea. There was a thing where he's talking about it, and it ends up that he went to the American embassy. He did a live stream on it, and he got an emergency visa. So in other words, he tried to leave Korea while on a travel ban until his legal situation got sorted out, and he found out he couldn't leave Korea. He thought, well, if I just throw away my visa, my passport, I'll get an emergency passport, and then they'll let me go. Like I said, Johnny Somali's an idiot because he doesn't realize that when you have a travel ban, it's against your name. It's not against your passport. He actually thought, if I throw away my American passport and get an emergency passport, I can get out of Korea. This guy is so monumentally stupid and depraved. It's just amazing. But people will pay him to break the laws and harass citizens of the country that he goes to. And his whole shtick is that because he's in a foreign country and because he's an American citizen and they don't speak English, that what ends up happening is that they'll just kind of, we don't speak English, and just go away. We'll slap on a wrist, and that'll be it, like what Japan did. Yeah, Korea's not going that route, so it's getting pretty interesting. But this begs the question, because when Johnny Somali came here to Korea, there's other nuisance streamers that came to Korea as well. So when we look at this, Johnny Somali trial raises question, how should Korea handle nuisance streamers or influencers? So there's another comfort woman statue that, he did some terrible things with. Talks about him. His real name is Ramzi Khalid Ismail, has been barred from leaving Korea, is being tried on 3 charges at the time of this article. And we're going to go over and show you the charges he pled guilty to and the charges he's going to be facing and how there's even more charges that are being investigated. So he's a new type of content creator and live streaming IRL, which means in real time, live streaming and going through kind of like, the other day I went through and I walked through Korea and talking to people and showing the festival being set up and stuff. But what he does is a nuisance influencer, is a nuisance streamer. He harasses people, breaks the law to get clicks and view, and people pay him money to do that. It's absolutely insane. So, he's vandalized a convenience store, all of this stuff. This was back in October last year. In case you didn't know, it is now, what is it, like June or something like that? Yeah, the 20th of June. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how long this has taken. So, anyway, it goes through and... the stuff he's done, he's talked about Hiroshima and how Japan should have destroyed Korea, and again, kind of going over this whole stuff. Other nuisance streamers have come here to Korea, and they have filmed content, guys go by the name of Ice Poseidon and some other people, some other ones that came to Korea. So once they saw that they could get away and harass people and break laws and get clicks and views, and in other words, make money, what they found out is like, hey, this is an open door. This is a cash cow. So let's all go to Korea and we'll be nuisance streamers and we'll make a bunch of money. And Korea is known for, being pretty chill on their punishment and so on and so forth. So we got nothing to worry about. That's what they ended up talking about, and that's what they're doing. So that whole article talking about, what should Korea do and how should they respond to nuisance streamers, this case is very important because this is going to set the tone. And if they let Johnny Somali off with a small fine and, maybe a few days in prison or jail or whatever, and then deport him and say, other nuisance streamers will say, hey, I can make thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. What's a little $500 fine or $1,000 fine and, maybe a couple nights in jail? That's more clout for me. I'll just make more videos. I'll make more money. In other words, they'll see this and they'll say, fine, a little bit of jail time, no big deal. On my side of the coin, I'm going to make a buttload of money. So it's worth it for me and other nuisance streamers to come to Korea and harass Korean citizens. Yeah, so this is a very important thing on how Korea is going to respond to this. And it's kind of interesting. So I want to kind of go over some other information on this and talk about this right here. Let me move this over here. This is courtesy of Legal Mindset. And what this ends up, not that right here, this little diagram here shows you actually what is going on with the Korean legal system. And so let's just go ahead and we'll put this in the center of the page. And if you see step 1, a criminal complaint is submitted, and it talks about that. And as soon as all that information is gathered, then it goes to step 2, which is a police investigation, which could be, depending on how long it takes, it could be 4 months where the police investigate this type of situation. And then it'll go to step 3, where if the police gather enough information and they say, okay, well, this is good enough to be passed on to the prosecutor, then the prosecutor will do an investigation, 2, maybe 4 months, somewhere around there, and then it will go to step 4, which is trial. Now, here's the interesting thing about this Johnny Somali thing, is that during the complaint, the step 1, the step 2, the police investigation, and step 3, the prosecutor's investigation, Johnny is out on his own recognizance. Here's another interesting thing, though, that when Johnny, he's being investigated by the police in step 2, if the police submit that to the prosecution has a successful prosecution rate of 98%. So yeah, it's the police do a really good, thorough investigation. They gather all the evidence and they say, yeah, this looks like this is going to be, beyond a shadow of a doubt, a high percentage that this, results in guilty charges. They pass it on to the prosecutor. And once it goes to the prosecution, there's a 98% chance that the person who is charged with those crimes will be guilty, because the prosecutors also do their investigation, which can take up to 4 months. So with all these things that Johnny Somali has done, it's no wonder, which was October last year, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, we're talking 9, almost 10 months now, and he has another court case coming up in August. He's going to have been here in Korea on a travel ban, and he can't leave. So, but he's still streaming and making money. But the problem is that he's left to his own recognizance, and then it ends up he catches more charges. So the man is truly an idiot. Eventually it'll go to the prosecution, it'll go to trial, as we see in step 4, and where he will go before a judge, and what will end up happening is that Johnny will end up saying, are you guilty, are you innocent, and so on and so forth. Well, the interesting thing about this is that Johnny has already gone to court for a number of cases, but he hasn't got his punishment yet. Because here in Korea, what they end up doing, which is kind of genius because they're giving him more rope to hang himself, he can go through a court, he can plead guilty, and then he has to wait for all of these other charges, and then he goes before and he gets his final sentencing, which is a culmination of all the fines and the punishments that he's going to receive, and that happens at one time, and then immediately at that, he will have to pay the fines, he'll do prison or however many years, and then after that, he will go to and be deported from Korea, and most likely have a travel ban where he can't return to Korea for X amount of years. I say ban him for life, and Johnny Somali should be banned for life from all countries because he's an idiot. So the interesting thing is that, yeah, with all of these open cases, he still has to wait in Korea, and he's not serving any time yet. Again, he's out on his own recognizance, but he keeps getting into more and more trouble, which is really interesting. When we take a look at some of these charges here, he's on his first court. What he ended up doing, as you can see, there's the charge of obstruction of business. I'm not sure why that's moving, which has a max penalty of 5 years, disrupting in the 7-Eleven with the drunken disorderly, yelling at people, throwing his ramen, and just being a nuisance. He was guilty of that. A Minor Crimes Act, which is a fine or up to 30 days max penalty for he had a rotting fish and he's going around harassing people with it, which is a crime in which he pled guilty to. Again, the 4 guilties that we see over here, it ends up that he went to court and he pled guilty. Minor Crimes Act is kind of like it's not like crimes against children. That's a whole different thing. Minor crimes is kind of like a misdemeanor offense and things like that. So then he had another one for a Minor Crimes Act for disrupting the bus and the metro system. So he was playing loud music. He actually played sexually explicit audios and sounds in the presence of children and so on and so forth. And it disrupted the metro system because they had to stop what they were doing. And he live streamed it all of this, and so he had no other choice but to plead guilty. Yeah, so he did that. And then he had another obstruction of business, count 2, for a max of 5 years, and loud music on the bus, making monkey noises, among other things, and he pled guilty to that. The interesting thing about Korea is that they usually don't give the max punishment. So yeah, they're pretty lenient here in Korea, but we're hoping that with Johnny Somali, they will give the max punishment because he shows no remorse. He says, oops, I'm sorry. And then he goes around and he breaks the laws even more. So, he pled guilty on that court date for those 4 things. So, the max he could get is 10 years and 60 days. But Korea generally doesn't give max punishments out. It could just end up being, obstruction of business. It could. What do you do with that? But the thing that he's done it multiple times and shows no remorse. He's gone on live stream and told and threatened the judge. He threatened the judge's mother. He said the judge and the prosecutor are stupid and F them and F this and blah, blah, blah and all this kind of stuff. And he hasn't even got his sentencing yet. How stupid do you have to be to plead guilty to these crimes, and then the judge that is going to sentence you, you tell that judge and the prosecutor to F off, and you threaten the judge's mother? That is insane. It makes no sense whatsoever. No rational or intelligent human being, somebody with a couple of brain cells, would ever do that. You would think, here's the situation. Let's say like you broke the law that you were ignorant of here in Korea. Maybe you got drunk in the convenience store and you're spilling your ramen or whatever. You were ignorant of the law. That's fine. But you pled guilty and you pay the fine and you show remorse. And as you're waiting for your trial, you're like, hey, I'm sorry. You go, you stream because everybody does social media these days, and you go online and you say, hey, I'm sorry. I got drunk. I shouldn't have done it. I apologize. I was being a jerk, and I'm sorry. I asked forgiveness for the Korean people. I went to the store owner. Many times here in Korea, to make things right, you give a monetary amount to the victim, and that helps, settle things down, and he hasn't done that. So, he's basically spitting in the face of the Korean legal system here, and it's not going to do him well because he's doing the exact opposite by threatening the judge, the prosecutor, and so on and so forth. But the interesting thing is that now that he's pled guilty to those 4 charges, when he goes to his next court appearance, he's going to be going as a convicted criminal. And so the charges on his next court case, if he's guilty on those or found guilty, will be aggravated because he's a habitual criminal. Yeah, absolutely crazy. So the other court case that is coming up in August, it's August 13th, and I'm kind of following this. It's a deepfake video. It has a max penalty of 10.5 years, and whereas a male Korean streamer is the face of a male Korean was digitally put onto the body of somebody else, and then that was a depiction of the video showing him kissing some other Korean man, which was Hank Yu, and then they distributed that. Ramsey distributed that. We don't know if he actually made it, but according to Korean law, even if you just distribute the video, you are complicit and you're toast. You've done that. And he showed it on his live streams. He showed it on his Discord. There's actually proof and videos of him doing this. He's talked about it. And the person that he did that against, another Korean streamer, is going to testify to this, and you have the video. So he pled not guilty before the judge, but now in August, they're going to see the victims come forward and give their testimony and all the other type of evidence. And unfortunately, Ramsey is not going to have, he can't plead ignorance because he put this stuff out. And ignorance is not bliss, and there is no excuse for ignorance when it comes to the law. The second deepfake account comes from an IRL streamer, a female streamer named Bong Bong, and I think she's underage. But either way, it doesn't matter if she's underage or if she's an adult, like 18, 19 years old. What Ramsey did was take her face, put it onto digitally made, where he was kissing her. And here in Korea, kissing is considered a sexual act. And because she did not, this wasn't a thing, he said she was his girlfriend, so on and so forth on live streams. He said it multiple times, which was not actually the case at all. He misrepresented her. He abused her trust and made this deepfake video, those two kissing. Well, that's against the law here in Korea. So, a max penalty of 10.5 years. They're kind of serious about this. There's a lot of deepfake videos that is happening here in Korea that are being charged, and there's a lot of cases. So this isn't like it's something that's brand new to Korea. This has happened, but this is getting more light because Johnny Somali is doing it, and it's getting worldwide attention. So when he went to court for the two deepfake videos, and then he has another obstruction of business charge from Lotte World, which he was at. Lotte World was just kind of like a Disneyland here in Korea, and he was in line. There's women and children and young and old kids and adults and so on and so forth. He was live streaming and playing music and audio on his Bluetooth speaker that everybody could hear. Sexual things going on, North Korean music. I mean, he was just being a nuisance, and he interrupted the business. So Lotte World actually filed, and that is kind of an interesting thing right there. So in his last court case, he pled not guilty to these three charges. But coming up in August, they're going to have the witnesses, so probably Lotte World is going to have a representative. They're going to say, hey, here's the evidence of where he disrupted our business. It's all live streamed, just like the other ones, and so it'll most likely be guilty. You can't say, well, I didn't know. He said, well, I didn't know, and he played Korean things, but he knew what he was putting out. Also, the sexual material in the midst of children is an interesting thing that was brought up numerous times on his videos, and people are like, how can you do this? Well, that's coming. That's an interesting thing that we're going to see there. So he pled not guilty to all these. So in August, the victims are going to give their testimony, and that's not the end of it. So they will have some time after August, probably September, October. We might see, this, but there's more charges. So this is going to push this whole process out into probably, I would say, the beginning of next year. Remember, he got here in like October last year. So he will be here over a year, and he's done even more stuff, which is absolutely insane. It's crazy because what Johnny Somali ended up doing was on his live stream, one time he ended up getting drunk. It looks like he was popping pills or whatever. He was in his underwear, went outside, harassed construction workers and other people, is yelling and screaming. As he's live streaming this, I would think indecent exposure, and in light of all the other problems that he's had here legally in Korea, he continues to do stupid. So, stupid is as stupid does, and Ramsey doesn't disappoint because he keeps doing stupid. So all of this is going to come to the head, and, people are like, oh, we wish that he just go to trial, get punished, and boom, be done with it. But oh, he should be banned from streaming. Actually, I don't think he should be banned from streaming because he keeps digging a hole, filming himself, harassing people, committing more crimes, which shows that he hasn't had a change of heart. He truly isn't sorry for the things that he's done. This is kind of interesting. So yeah, it ends up, it's kind of crazy on what Johnny has done, and it's just not good. It's just not good at all. Let me see if some other things on here. Do I got some other pictures that I want to talk about? Nope, I think that's it. So his next court is going to be in August. Again, the victims are going to come forward of the deepfake videos in the latte world, and he does have some other charges, which, that's what I want to talk about. The other charges. The other charges he has is crimes against children. So this is actually being investigated. And let me see if I can find that information. I had it and I closed the tab. Go figure. What a jerk. Let's see if we can find this. Dun, 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 dun. And this is interesting because according to Legal Mindset, there has been, and we'll listen to some of this. He's got some really good information. So we're going to just kind of go through this and see how this works. So let's take a look-see on this. Legal Mindset, awesome guy.
Involved with Johnny Somali. However, this one, since it's from the past few months, and literally has Hank sitting side by side with Johnny Somali, that's something that they're going to take very, very, very seriously, and they're going to investigate, and Hank may even be called in and questioned as a part of this, right, as a part of this process, because he was indeed right there with Johnny Somali. He was sitting there. He knew what they were doing. He was the one that provided the computer. He provided the internet access. This harassment was going on from within his apartment. So you put all those things together and you look at it and you say, it's a reasonable person could expect that Hank, knowing he's under potential suspicion for harassment, would indeed delete his profiles, go into hiding, back things up. Interesting one. So this is from inside the Discord very recently.
So anyway, it ends up, we got a comment here from Chris. Good morning from Chris, way down south in Sachon. Hey, thank you, Chris, for watching. I'm up here close to Pyeongtaek, actually, Anjungni, close to Camp Humphreys, where the U.S. military base is. So, we're going over this stuff with Johnny Somali. The new case that is going to be investigated, or the complaint has been filed, is crimes against children, or the Children Welfare Act. So that's what we're getting at here is now this is a new complaint.
So people are trying to say, am I making this up? And this is when I was talking about the confirmation at the official investigation. And I love the response here. It doesn't mean much. They can try. I think it means a lot. I think it means up to 10 years behind bars, 10 years in prison. That is a lot. And they are indeed going to investigate that. That's indeed going to be something that is a little bit more than tried. That's going to be a lot of heat on both Johnny and potentially Hank as well. And I think the real issue here is that this is something they're going to be very harshly scrutinized on multiple accounts. Johnny for Lotte World, for harassing minors on the street, for other instances and altercations, as well as for this online interaction with minors via Ome.tv.
Yeah, this is kind of the interesting thing here because the whole stick that it ends up that Legal Mindset is talking about and that other people have brought up is that he goes on Omegle TV, which is another streaming thing. You can kind of like do a FaceTime chat with people and then they stream it. Well, Hank and Johnny Somali have been caught talking to minors, saying that they're going to rape them, that they're going to harass them. Again, being here in Korea, that's problematic because he has also done this live with Korean citizens, Korean women, young girls, saying that he would rape them and that essay, I can't say, that, but, unfortunately, all of this has now been filed of saying, okay, there's enough instances of him doing it, one, online here in Korea with young women who are underage. And it's amazing because Johnny films this stuff with Hank, his buddy. They're live streaming it, and of course, everybody copies it, and it has all been transmitted to the prosecutor's office. So a complaint has been filed. It is now in the stage 2 where the police are investigating this. They have accepted the complaint. So again, if you remember the little step chart that we ended up having, could be 2 to 4 months of investigation on the police side of the house. And then if they determine and say, well, this is good enough, this meets, he's trying basically, suggesting that children should have X with him and that he would grape them and do all these things, recording himself saying these things, and then he's also doing it in person here in Korea on his live streams to young women. There's probably more than enough evidence. But again, it's going to take probably a few months for the police to investigate that. Then it will go to the prosecutor. They'll do their investigation. And then the legal mindset guy has some people here in Korea that help out with that, where they go through all of the videos that Johnny makes, that Hanks makes, and then they forward that of showing, hey, this is where they committed these crimes. And it's really a great thing, I think it is, because for the most part, foreign countries, what they'll do is that, they get a nuisance streamer, they don't bother going through all the videos and everything because of the language barrier. And it's like, just slap a fine and get them out of here. We don't want to deal with it. But Korea is now stepping up and they're putting some serious charges on him. And because he is a convicted criminal, he pled guilty to those 4 crimes. In the first trial, he hasn't been punished yet. He's got to go to the court in August, and now that he has these new charges, that's going to be another 3, 4, maybe 5 more months, and then he'll go to trial, have to wait, and then go to trial. That could be another month or 2. So it could be another, I don't know, could be maybe 3 months, maybe another 8 months before that trial ends. And then let's say these new charges, if that's all that gets charged, he will have to do those 8 months in Korea, not allowed to work, can't leave Korea. And so from October last year until, good Lord, 8 months from now, he has to be in Korea. Then he goes and he has to plead guilty or not guilty. And then let's say he pleads not guilty. Well, that's going to draw that out even more. So they're going to add a few more months and there'll be another trial and then there'll be witnesses and that'll take another month or 2. And then it'll finally get to a place of where, he will give his piece and then there'll be a court date again where he will stand before the judge. The judge will make a ruling and they, you're guilty, you're just an idiot. And then will come the sentencing. And then the sentencing will culminate all of the cases. Every single one of them. They'll say, okay, well, I got 30 days for this. There's a fine for this. So many years for this. Whatever the judge's rule, they'll throw all that together and say, okay, ultimately, here is your fine that you have to pay. Here is your jail or prison time. And some of these also, as part of the punishment, is labor. So that's the whole deal with this is that he's going to be working in a cabbage field and, doing manual labor. It's interesting. There's a lot of speculation of people saying, oh, well, when he goes to a Korean prison, the Korean prisoners are going to jack him up because he disrespected Korea. I've worked in prisons in the United States, 2 prisons, medium restricted prisons, Territorial Correctional Facility in Colorado, and then also Fremont Correctional Facility in Colorado. I was a lieutenant. And it's not like that. In the United States, people who commit crimes go to prison and there's no concessions made. If you're a foreigner, if you're, an American citizen or whatever, you go to prison, you do your time. Here in Korea, prison is very different because they have a foreigner prison. So he will not be around Korean inmates. He will be in a foreign prison, which is in Chonan, which is an interesting fact about here in Korea. I think it's the only country that has a foreigner prison. The majority of inmates are Chinese and other nationalities, and then some Americans, obviously, but the majority of them are Chinese, I think Thai. I can't remember the percentages or anything, but then there's also Americans as well. So he will not be around Korean inmates. He's going to be around other foreigners that are doing their time here in Korea, and he will do some hard labor, hopefully. It wouldn't break my heart. And there's no good time in Korea. So for those of you who know, or those of you, I should say, don't know, usually in the prison systems in the United States, somebody gets charged with a crime. Since I'm familiar with the Department of Corrections in Colorado, I can give you my 2 cents on this. But generally, you get charged with a crime, you get sentenced, you go to a prison, like a state prison in Colorado, and then depending on your behavior, you can get your time reduced. So in other words, they call that good time. And you can reduce your sentence, depending on the severity of the crime, up to 50% if you don't get in trouble while you're in prison. So in other words, if you don't break laws, if you don't, do drugs, if you don't get in fights, you don't stab people, you try to rehabilitate yourself by getting education and doing all these things and getting counseling, you check all the right boxes, you can reduce the time served as good time. And so in other words, a prison sentence of 10 years might end up just being 5, or 5 might end up being 2.5, and then you could get out early with parole. Here in Korea, they don't do that. Yeah, they don't have good time. And Korean prisons, even the one in Cheonan, I'm going to see if I can find some videos of that. Did find some articles showing the inside, but prison is prison, But I did find out that they do have like microwaves, they do have food. But with him having to do manual labor, if he gets charged and found guilty of some of the crimes that he ends up doing, which includes, hard labor, what is that going to look like? I don't know. That is going to be very interesting. So yeah, Johnny Somali is an absolute idiot. And I think it's the longer he stays out on his own recognizance, just gives him more rope in which to hang himself. And I've talked to a number of other expats that are here in Korea. And unfortunately, for the people that are African American, they hate Johnny Somali. It's like he puts a bad light on everybody that is African American descent. And it's unfortunate because then, people of Korea, they're loving, they're kind, they're respectful, they're hardworking. I mean, I love Korea. The crime rate is low and everybody has respect and honor for other people for the most part. That's why I have a low crime rate, amongst other things. But now, with nuisance streamer like Johnny Somali, now people are like, they see somebody who's a foreigner. And Koreans are like, ooh, yeah. They think about Johnny Somali and they put that bias on other foreigners that are not Johnny Somali. So he's really doing a disservice not only to Americans, but for his heritage as being an Ethiopian American. I think one or both of his parents came from Ethiopia. It's just, it's absolutely insane. They don't realize what they're doing. But this just shows you how bad Johnny Somali is. He doesn't care about anybody. He has no moral compass. It's broke. It's stuck on stupid. And what we're seeing is the result of F around and find out. So, yeah, Korea is kind of, even though the process of justice is long and the wheels are turning real slow here in Korea, it's just giving Johnny more rope to hang himself. And he's not smart enough to realize that, so he commits more crimes, live streaming, and all of those videos are, clips of those videos and the things that he does are being passed on to the prosecution showing, yeah, he is not remorseful, he is still committing crime, he's still harassing Korean citizens and businesses. Excuse me. I mean, what would you call it when you go get drunk and it's, early hours of the morning, it's daylight and you're out in your underwear live streaming, screaming at people, telling and the police show up, oh, arrest me, oh, you can't do, whatever. It is absolutely insane. So, the whole thing is that Johnny Somali and whatever Korea does is going to have a lasting impact when it comes to nuisance streamers. They've already had a number of nuisance streamers. Ice Poseidon, some guy named Ice Poseidon. It's funny how these nuisance streamers think they're all that in a bag of chips. But if you take away their streaming, they're nobodies. They're not productive citizens. They're just greedy, narcissistic, egotistical people who don't care or respect the laws of the countries that they visit because it's all about money for them. They're truly despicable human beings, and I rarely say that. But the fact that they will do things like this, and especially when it's crimes against children, that really, really bugs me. That just, ooh, man, you want to piss me off? Beat a child, do something against a child, against an innocent child, and if it's threatening to hurt them or SA them or grape them, whatever it is. I know, why am I saying grape? Because YouTube doesn't like it when you use the word that we all know. It's just really odd. You can't say, SA, but on news everywhere else you can, but YouTube can't. It's just kind of an odd thing. But people that do that are truly despicable, and they should be, in the case of Johnny Somali, him playing that type of content in the midst of children and adults or adults in public venues or businesses and metros and train stations and bus stations. It just really shows how depraved he is. And he doesn't care because he's making money. So it is a means to an end, and he doesn't care how he gets the money. So if that includes threatening people, harassing people, breaking the laws of the land, and not giving an F, Johnny Somali, I hoping and praying that Korea will give him the max punishment. They probably won't, but I'm hoping they will go like 3/4 of the way, half to 3/4. Because if you remember on that one picture that we talked about, let me see if I can pull that up again. Where is it? Boom. We're talking about where the max penalty is for those guilty is max 5 years, fine in 30 days, and another max 5 years. Let's say he just gets half for the time of the obstruction of business. 2.5 years, and he gets 2.5 years. That's 5 years in prison that he will do. He'll get some fines, which, by the way, if you can't pay your fines in Korea, you stay in prison longer. But then if it comes down to the deepfake videos, you're looking at 10 years, another 10.5 years, another 5 years for the obstruction of business. So let's say it's another 2.5 years for this. So he's got 5 years. So 2.5 here, 2.5 here. That'd be 5. 6, 7.5 years, 7.5 years, and then the deep fake charges. Let's say he gets a few years for that. It's realistic that he could spend 10 years or more in a Korean prison. And again, it all depends, on what the judges decide and everything. But when you get to the point of where you're threatening the judges, you're telling them to F off, you're threatening the judge's mother, it's not going to go well. Now, the interesting thing is that he went, and his first court case where he pled guilty to those 4 charges was in another district. Now he's going to, I think, the Eastern District in Seoul to face the deepfake charges. Don't you think that the judges talk amongst themselves, especially with something as high profile as this, which is going to determine whether, hey, are we going to let nuisance streamers come in and harass our citizens? Or are we going to put a stop to this and make an example of this guy? And it just shows for the normal person, if you committed a crime, even if you just got a traffic ticket and hey, you need to appear in court on this date, blah, 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 or you can pay the fine. If you go to court, you show up to court on time. In the first court appearance for Johnny Somali, he was over an hour late and he was hungover. How do we know he's hungover? Because he did a live stream all during until the wee hours of the morning where he was 9 sheets to the wind drunk. And he showed up to court late. And he has a public defender, said he had a lawyer, which was, I think, provided by his buddy Hank and their family. Probably not a real good idea because I think he was like an estate lawyer or something like that. He wasn't a criminal lawyer. I think the last time he did criminal law in court was 10, 15, 20 years ago, something like that. He was like a real estate or a tax attorney or whatever. So I don't think he understood what was really going on. or the severity of this case. I think he did it as a favor for Hank Hughes' family. Hey, our son is involved. Well, yeah, we know this guy who's a lawyer. You can use him. But yeah, lawyers to Johnny's not doing good. And the fact that he pled guilty to the first 4 charges is absolutely insane. So we're going to continue going and looking at Johnny Somali from time to time to give some updates on this. And maybe we'll talk about some other people like Vitaly, the Russian guy streamer who is in the Philippines. We might take a look at that. I don't know. But definitely this hits home because as an American expat here in Korea, what nuisance streamers do here and how Korea is going to handle this situation, that might affect me, but I have family members, my wife's family and their family members are all Koreans, and I don't want them to be harassed by nuisance streamers. And all of the Koreans that I've had interactions with that have seen Johnny Somali, or we talk about it and what he has done, they all want him to get the max punishment. So yeah, it is just absolutely insane. I mean, if somebody played sexually explicit material in the waiting line of kind of like a Disneyland or whatever, that as a parent you would go and say, hey, you need to cut that out because of my underage child. Ramsey doesn't care about that. And worse. Yeah, he's done worse. And he films it all, so it's absolutely insane. So anyway, that's what we got going on with the Johnny Somali update. Again, he's pled guilty, as the little summary we'll just go over. He's pled guilty to 4 crimes, already pled guilty, awaiting sentencing until after all of these things have been concluded. He has the thing in August with the 2 deepfakes and the obstruction of justice, where the judge is going to listen to the victims, and then there will be another court date after that, which is probably going to be a couple of months. So we're looking at August, September, October, maybe November. And then now that there has been another charge filed, you're looking at another 2 to 4 months of investigation. So that's going to push into probably early next year, and then another court date. It's just absolutely insane. We get a comment here. Greg says, IRK Somali is a gift to tubers like you. He's a part that gets nothing but bad publicity. The media attention on him. He's trying to, let's get you back up there. He's trying to crawl under a rock, but don't let him. It's good for you. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's bad for the Korean people, but it's good for, like you said, streamers that are highlighting this. But I think it's important because the more disdain that we have and the more that we voice this situation as being something that shouldn't be the norm, hopefully the Korean government will take this and they will end up imposing a harsh punishment on Johnny Somali. So yeah, it's I don't think it's good for me. Honestly, if I had the choice of him not doing that and me not having the material to do the coverage, I'd rather not have the material. I'd rather just do my 3D printing, my expat in Korea, and miniature painting and all that stuff. I'd rather just do that than have the content of somebody who harasses people, breaks the laws of the land, and, welfare crimes against children, which is the new case that is going to be investigated. Yeah, it's just absolutely insane. So anyway, thanks, Chris and Greg and all of that. Greg ends up saying, hope you get lots of money from this. I don't know. I just recently got monetized on my channel. So maybe I'll get a couple nickels, but whatever money does come in will go back into the channel and help do my 3D printing, the American expat stuff. We share our experiences on how we retired here in Korea, and a number of people who have actually seen the videos on that, them and their Korean spouses have been able to come back and retire in Korea as well. So there's that. I'd rather much do that. I really like doing that. So anyway, let's go ahead and close this out. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. If you want to send me a message, there's my email address. And if you see the scrolling ticker down here, those are people that have bought me coffee, and you can buy me coffee too. But if you don't, that's absolutely cool. Just like and subscribe. So with that being said, we're going to sign off here from Korea. Thank you for watching, and People like Johnny Somali should be punished to the fullest extent of the law, in my opinion. So with that being said, we're going to let you all go. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you on the next video. Peace. Yeah, Johnny's an idiot.